welcome to this deep dive. We're going to be talking about, well, spiritual journeys. And specifically, this idea of a dark night of the soul.
Ooh, that sounds intense.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what our source material is all about, framing it as this, big transformative experience, almost like an initiation for people who are on a spiritual path.
Yeah.
They even use the term chosen ones,
Okay.
which I admit sounds a little, maybe a little much.
Yeah, a little over the top, maybe.
But don't worry, we're going to unpack all of this together,
Right.
see what we can learn from it.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea because I'm curious about this chosen ones thing, too. I mean, is this like, some people are just destined for these big spiritual shakeups? Or is it more, accessible than that?
That's a really good question. And even before we get to the chosen ones thing, what about this whole dark night of the soul idea?
Right.
Is that a widely accepted thing? Or is it something that's kind of unique to this particular source?
Well, the term itself, Dark Night of the Soul, might be specific to the source.
Right.
But the idea behind it, I think, is pretty universal, actually. Like, if you look at different spiritual traditions, across the board, there's a lot of emphasis on, growth coming through challenge and doubt.
Right.
Even questioning what you believe.
Yeah.
It's like this process of shedding what no longer serves you to make space for something new.
I can see that.
Right.
So maybe it's less about literally being chosen and more about, anyone who's going through intense personal growth.
I think so.
Like those times when you feel like the rug's being pulled out from under you.
Totally. Think about those moments in your own life when everything you thought you knew was suddenly, up in the air, whether it's a major life change, a loss, or even just a deep realization that something needs to shift.
Yeah.
It's those experiences, right?
Yeah.
While challenging, often lead to the most profound growth.
I mean, that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes you have to break things down to build something better.
Right.
So in our source, they break down this dark night experience into 5 stages.
Okay, 5 stages.
And the first one, they talk about it as this big external shakeup, like it's that feeling of your built-up life sort of crumbling around you.
Like a tower of blocks just falling.
Exactly. Career, beliefs, relationships, it all seems to fall apart. And I'm curious, in your work, have you seen this play out?
Oh, absolutely. All the time.
Right.
And what makes people resist this first stage, the letting go part, I'd say probably the biggest obstacle is fear.
Makes sense.
Fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear of not being good enough.
Yeah.
It's so much easier to just cling to what we know, right?
Right. Yeah.
Even if it's not working, because at least it's familiar.
Get that devil, kind of thing.
Exactly. But the source argues that this crumbling, it's actually necessary. It's not a punishment. It's more like an invitation to examine what you've built your life on.
That's a really interesting way to look at it. So it's not like you're being punished for being bad or doing something wrong. It's more like, hey, let's take a look at this foundation and see if it's really, sturdy enough.
Yeah.
Okay. So you lose your external world, or at least it feels like it, in this first stage. Then we move on to stage 2, which the source describes as an identity crisis.
Ooh, okay. So we've got external crisis, now internal crisis.
Exactly. It's like that moment when, the mask comes off and you realize the person you thought you were maybe wasn't real.
Whoa. That sounds intense.
What do you make of that?
I mean, it makes sense, right? We all have these labels we attach to ourselves, the roles we play, the titles we hold, even the stories we tell ourselves about, who we are. And it can be really disorienting to suddenly realize that, wait a minute, maybe those things don't actually define me.
Yeah. It's like, think about when you graduate, right? You're not a student anymore.
Right, exactly.
And there's grief for that, but there's also this whole wide world of possibilities opening up.
And I think that's the beauty of this stage. It's scary, sure, but it's also about letting go of who you thought you were to make space for who you truly are. Have you ever had a job title that just didn't fit anymore?
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Right. And letting go of that, it can be painful, but it can also be incredibly liberating.
Absolutely. So you've had this external breakdown, then the internal breakdown of your identity, and then comes stage 3, which is where we get into the shadow self.
Oh, okay, the shadow self.
This is where the source talks about all that stuff we try to keep buried coming to the surface. The old wounds, the fears, the parts of ourselves we'd rather not acknowledge.
Yeah, those parts we try to hide.
Yeah.
From everyone, including ourselves.
Exactly. What's going to turn out in this stage?
Well, this stage, it's really about acceptance. accepting all of ourselves, even the parts that, we'd rather pretend don't exist.
Right.
It's not about judging those parts, but more about acknowledging them, understanding them, and integrating them into a whole self. It's like, imagine trying to heal from an injury that you refuse to even look at. It's not going to work, right? You can't heal what you won't acknowledge.
But it's like you have to shine a light on the darkness.
Hmm.
So you've faced this external chaos. Your identity is crumbled. You're confronting your shadow self. And then we hit stage 4, and this is where the Source uses the word disconnected. Disconnected from the world, from loved ones, even from yourself. What's happening here?
So this is like, okay, I've lost everything.
Yeah,
My world, who I thought I was, the good stuff, the bad stuff. Now what?
right, exactly.
And, the Source describes this as a feeling of being completely untethered, like floating in space.
Like in the void?
Yeah, like you're in this void. It's about letting go of everything you once held dear, including your sense of self. It can feel incredibly empty, scary even.
I have to admit, I'm feeling a little overwhelmed just hearing about all of this.
It is intense.
Can we just maybe take a pause for a second and talk about what this void experience actually means for someone going through it?
Sure.
Is it really about just giving up?
No, not at all. It's about surrender, but not in a passive way. It's more like actively choosing to let go of the need to control, to understand, to define. It's about trusting that even in this, emptiness, there's a deeper wisdom at play.
Right.
The Source describes it as this fertile ground, like where new life can emerge.
So it's not the end, it's more like a beginning.
It's where the old dies and the new is born.
Okay, I'm starting to see that. So you've lost your external world, your identity, face your shadow, and now you're lost in this void. A lot to go through. So naturally, people want to know what comes next.
Mhm.
Right. Which brings us to stage 5, the rebirth.
Okay, the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. Is it that simple? Is it just like everything's good now?
Well, not exactly. It's about stepping into a new way of being. It's not about going back to the way things were before. The Source makes that really clear. Like, you've been through the fire, so to speak, and you're not the same person who entered the tunnel.
Yeah. It's like you said, something has to die for something new to be born.
Right.
And you've been forged, like almost like a sword in the fire.
Yeah, I like that image.
Which I guess, kind of makes sense of this rebirth idea. You're not just like the old you patched up. You're something new entirely.
Right. And that's where the real journey begins, I think. It's not about reaching this stage and then everything's magically perfect.
Right.
It's about figuring out how to live as this new version of yourself, how to integrate all those, tough lessons you've learned into your everyday life.
And that's what we're going to be talking about next time. What happens after these 5 stages.
Yeah.
How this rebirth actually plays out in the real world. Because I have a feeling it's not all sunshine and roses, right?
Yeah, definitely not. We'll unpack all of that in our next deep dive. Welcome back. So we just explored these 5, intense stages of the dark night of the soul,
Yeah.
ending with this like metaphorical rebirth.
Right, exactly.
So now the question is, what happens after this rebirth? How does someone actually start to live in the real world with this new awareness?
Because it's not like you just, walk out of that metaphorical tunnel and poof, everything's perfect.
No.
In fact, our Source says this is where the real work begins.
Oh, yeah.
You're raw, vulnerable, you've shed all these layers, but now you got to figure out how to actually exist
Right.
as this new version of yourself.
It's almost like you're, navigating this uncharted territory.
Yeah.
Imagine trying to wear clothes that just don't fit anymore,
Totally.
You can't squeeze back into the old version of yourself.
So you might be thinking, okay, I went through all this, I faced my shadow, I came out the other side, now what?
Right.
The Source talks about how this can be a really disorienting time.
Yeah.
So what are some of the things people might experience as they try to kind of make sense of this new reality?
Well, for starters, you might find that your priorities have shifted.
Okay.
Like things that used to matter a lot might suddenly feel insignificant.
Huh.
Goals you were chasing might no longer resonate.
Yeah.
It's like you've developed a new set of senses, a new perspective,
Okay.
and the old world just doesn't fit anymore.
It's like you were climbing the wrong ladder this whole time.
Right. Exactly.
You put in all this effort,
Right.
but now you realize it wasn't leading you where you actually wanted to go.
Yeah, yeah.
And the Source even points out that this can be a pretty lonely experience.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Like you're walking a path that no one else really understands.
Because in a way, you are right. Like, The Dark Night is a deeply personal experience.
Right.
No one else can fully grasp, what you've gone through.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you have to go through it alone. Like, finding people who resonate with your journey, even if they haven't had the exact same experiences,
Right.
can be incredibly supportive.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like you need people who can hold space for you
Yeah.
while you navigate this new terrain. But it's not just about finding the right people.
Right.
It's also about figuring out how to actually be in the world, right?
Exactly.
With this new awareness.
The Source talks about embracing the discomfort of not knowing. Like,
Yeah.
you've shed so many layers, it's natural to feel, lost, uncertain.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Okay.
In fact, it's from that place of not knowing that, like, real growth can emerge.
So it's about surrendering control, which seems to be like a theme
Yeah,
throughout this whole Dark Knight process, right?
for sure.
You got to let go of the need to have all the answers.
Yeah.
And just trust that clarity will come,
And that trust is built through those fires of the Dark Night,
Yeah.
You've already faced your fears, confronted your shadow, experienced the void. So even when this new phase feels uncertain, there's this deeper knowing that you'll get through it.
Oh.
You've proven that to yourself.
You've been there, done that.
Right.
The Source also uses this interesting word, emptiness, to describe what happens after the rebirth. And it sounds different from the void we were talking about earlier.
It is different.
No.
The void is about letting go, surrendering to the unknown.
Right.
This emptiness, it's more like a blank canvas,
Okay.
a space of potential
Right.
waiting to be filled,
Okay.
Not a lack of something, but an opening for something new.
So you're not just surviving anymore, you're actively creating.
Yeah.
That's when things start to feel, I imagine, more empowering.
Yeah, absolutely.
You get to decide how you want to fill that space.
Right.
How you want to express this new version of yourself.
Precisely. It's an opportunity to create a life that, genuinely reflects who you are
Right.
at your core. But, it's important to remember that this creation process, it can be messy.
Yeah, for sure.
There will be times when you feel lost, confused,
Right.
unsure of what you're doing.
And I bet that's when that fear creeps back in, right?
Oh, yeah, totally.
That fear of making a mistake.
Yeah.
Of choosing the wrong path.
Right.
Because now you're not just letting go of external things.
Right.
You're questioning everything,
Yeah.
including those like internal stories you tell yourself.
The Source reminds us that there are no mistakes,
Okay.
only opportunities for learning and growth.
Right.
Even if you stumble, even if you make choices that, don't work out, those experiences are still valuable.
Yeah.
They teach you, they refine your understanding of yourself,
Yeah.
and they ultimately lead you closer to where you're meant to be.
So it's about trusting the process.
Yeah.
Even when it feels, messy and uncertain.
Yeah.
The Source also points out that this shift you're going through, it's not just internal. It can also manifest externally.
Absolutely.
How so?
You might find yourself attracting new opportunities, new relationships, new experiences, all aligning with, this more authentic version of yourself.
Okay.
Think about it. When you're operating from a place of alignment,
Right.
when you're being true to yourself, you naturally draw in things that resonate with that energy.
So it's not just about, feeling good.
Right.
It's about attracting good into your life.
Yeah.
Because you're finally in sync with, like, who you truly are.
Exactly.
There's a sense of effortlessness that comes from that alignment,
Yeah.
which is kind of ironic considering how much effort it took to get to this point.
It is a bit of a paradox, isn't it?
Right.
But the Source reminds us that, this isn't a one-time deal, this
Right.
cycle of death and rebirth.
It really
It
is?
keeps going.
Oh, no.
We go through more dark nights.
Okay.
We face more challenges,
All right.
but each time we're better equipped to handle them.
Wait, so we got to go through this whole thing again. I thought the rebirth was the end of goal.
Yeah.
What does the Source say about these later dark nights?
Well, that's what we'll be exploring in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
How these dark nights evolve as we grow.
Okay.
How they become less about external upheaval and more about those, deeper existential questions
Wow.
that challenge us to keep evolving.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the dark night of the soul. So far we've explored those 5 stages of this whole process,
Yeah.
that messy rebirth that comes after,
Right.
and how it can really feel like you're navigating this totally uncharted territory.
Yeah, for sure.
But as we were saying, this isn't just a one-time deal.
Nope.
Our Source makes it pretty clear that these dark nights
Right?
They keep coming back.
They do, they do.
So, like, how did that work? How does that, like, play out over time?
Well, the soul says that as you know, grow spiritually,
Right.
the dark nights might actually get even more intense.
Oh,
Each one kind of taking you deeper, shaking up, different parts of your life.
so it's not just about, like, the same stuff over and over again. It's like, it evolves.
It evolves,
Right.
right?
So the first dark night might shake up your external world, like your career, your relationships.
Right, stuff you can see, the
Yeah.
tangible things.
Right, exactly. But then the next one, it goes deeper, right?
It does.
It makes you, like, question your identity,
Yeah.
your beliefs, the stories we tell ourselves about who we are.
It's almost like peeling back the layers of an onion,
Right.
That first layer might, sting your eyes, but as you keep peeling, you get closer to the core.
Okay, I see that.
Yeah.
But I gotta admit, that sounds kind of terrifying to me.
It is a little scary, yeah.
Like letting go of everything you think you are.
Yeah,
What's even left after that?
it's a paradox, right?
Yeah.
But the source suggests that by letting go of all those, like, ideas about who you are,
Right.
you actually come closer to, the truth of your being. You're clearing away the clutter to reveal that, foundation underneath.
So how do these, like, deeper dark nights actually show up in someone's life? That's a good question.
If the first one is about external upheaval,
Right.
the next one's about identity.
Yeah.
What comes after that?
Well, the source is a little vague on specifics,
Okay.
but I think the main point is that the challenges,
Yeah.
they evolve as you do.
Okay.
What used to, like, really shake you up might not have the same impact later on.
So it's like building a muscle, right?
Yeah, exactly.
What once felt like, ugh, this is impossible, this is so heavy,
Right.
it becomes, manageable as you get stronger.
Right. You can handle it.
So life has to, like, up the ante to get you to that place of surrender again.
Exactly. You need a bigger challenge.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I get that. So you're facing bigger challenges,
Right.
but you're also, like, bringing more strength and wisdom to the table.
You are.
So you're better equipped to handle them. That's it.
Right. And you're saying that the source suggests that, like, these later dark nights, they might involve grappling with, bigger questions.
They do.
The meaning of life, your purpose,
Yeah.
your connection to something greater than yourself.
Exactly.
Questions you might not have even considered before.
Right. You're on a different level now.
Right, exactly. Okay, so you're going through these intense dark nights, each one, like, stripping away more layers.
Yeah.
Pushing you to surrender and let go. It just sounds, like, exhausting.
It's a lot. Yeah.
Is there, like, an end point to all of this?
I mean, that's the question, right?
What's the ultimate goal?
Well, the goal isn't to, like, avoid the dark nights altogether.
Okay.
It's more about learning to navigate them with, more grace, acceptance,
Right.
trust in the process.
Because the darkness is just as necessary as the light.
It is, yeah. Think of it like a forest fire.
Okay.
It might seem destructive, right? At first, but it actually clears out the underbrush,
Okay.
creates space for new growth.
So it's not about life getting, easier. It's about you becoming more resilient,
It is, yeah.
better able to, weather the storms.
And with that resilience, I think, comes a deeper sense of peace,
Okay.
a knowing that no matter what life throws at you, you have the tools to navigate it.
You've faced the darkness and you've emerged, maybe not, unscathed,
Right.
but definitely transformed.
For sure.
Our source wraps up by talking about living beyond illusions
Yeah.
and finding true freedom.
That sounds nice.
What does that actually, like, look like in everyday life?
I think it starts with awareness
Okay.
and acceptance, letting go of that need to control everything,
Right.
to, like, grasp onto things that are ultimately impermanent,
Yeah.
embracing the present moment, allowing life to, unfold without resistance.
It's like learning to move with the current instead of constantly fighting against it.
That's a great way to put it. And the source suggests that this is where true freedom lies, not in escaping challenges,
Right.
but in moving through them with, grace, trust, and an inner peace that doesn't depend on external circumstances.
So after this whole deep dive into the dark night of the soul,
Yeah.
what's the key takeaway for our listeners? What should they be thinking about?
Well, I think the source offers a really powerful reframing of the whole dark night idea.
Yeah.
It's not a punishment, but an opportunity for
Okay.
transformation.
Right.
Yes, it's difficult, messy, often painful,
Yeah.
but it's through that darkness that we find our strength, our resilience,
Right.
and ultimately our true selves.
It's a reminder that growth isn't always linear or comfortable.
It's not, no.
It's messy, it's cyclical,
Yeah,
and sometimes we have to like journey through darkness to truly appreciate the light.
that's a good point.
So as you reflect on all of this, consider this. Is there an area of your own life that could benefit from a dark night shakeup? What
Yeah.
would it take to surrender control
Ooh, good question.
and embrace the unknown? That's something to ponder as we wrap up our deep dive. Thanks for joining us.